Conversation by Julie Benetti and Susan Barbaro is a production of EI Publishing in association with EI Alliance, copyright 2018. Visit eipublishing.com for more. Music for this series is courtesy of New Threads, copyright 2018, from their self-titled album, available now.
Hi, this is Susan. I'm here with Julie, and we don't really know what we're going to talk about, but we have a general idea. So, the interesting thing is we started a conversation, and it seems as though when you walk through life, there are rules, there's regulations, and there's only one way of doing everything. Everyone has, the set way. If you want to practice medicine, law, any kind of a licensed profession, well, you have to do it their way. You have to pass their tests, and it's set up as if that's the only way there is. And I've taught things in the past as you have, and one of the things that we have realized is that when we teach things, as we hope we're doing even in these podcasts, we're not really teaching. We're kind of opening a dialogue, and we make it a point that we're really focusing on a conversation. We're not telling anybody this is the way to do anything. We're really trying to bring around the idea of let's talk about it. And in anything we've taught, it's like, what do you think about it? And that's kind of where we started talking. And I say, many people live in a one-dimensional world. Mm-hmm. And I like to think that I live in a multidimensional world, meaning that it's multisensory, and I don't have one way of looking at anything. And even when we have these conversations, I'm always very, self-conscious that I talk, and sometimes I hesitate, and I use 2 or 3 different words because I'm trying to grasp a different idea or a different thought process. And I think that I think that's something that a lot of people want to do. I don't think people want to be dictated to.
I think it's hard sometimes too when you share your opinion. Is it really opinion? Is it a judgment? And it puts you in a censored dimension from the extent where, when you're looking at things, if you can remain open, there might be a certain way you live. And like you said before about the rules and the regulations, and granted, that's how society works. It's a matrix. Yet, if you align yourself with that, which it's hard not to do because, we all have to live together. But when you completely align yourself to that and the conversation only becomes about that, that's when you lose dimensions.
Exactly.
Because you don't stay open to the perception of other things. And you could have this great background, and that's what your expertise is. And, we've written a lot and we've talked a lot about expertise and energetic invocation. Yeah. So we talk about it. And your expertise could be that, and that's what you move and function from. And then when someone comes around and says, this is my opinion, and what do you think about that? Are you moving kind of with the herd mentality? Are you moving with where your expertise is? And how does that limit your dimensions?
Boring? It's so
it is. And it's the kind of the coffee clutch conversation, of just kind of sitting around and going, oh yeah, I don't like when he does that too. Oh yeah, I don't. Well,
so wait a minute. So I have to stop you for one very important point. Okay. When we said we were going to do this podcast, you says, I don't know what you're going to do. I have nothing to say. And I said, okay. And I opened it up. And what I'm getting at is that when you're open to ideas and thoughts, well, that's what happens. You start engaging. Not that you're telling me anything. You're expressing an ideology, which you can, of course, add to. I can listen to it, and we could keep talking. And what I'm saying is you're given a perfect example of what occurs when you're open-minded and you just have a conversation, and it's not like we're telling anybody anything. I'm simply interested in a conversation about something that's different. And I'm, we started talking, I do acupuncture, right? And, everyone says, oh, Giovanni Maciocia, that's the way it is. And when you go and you take your boards to be licensed, it's all his interpretation of acupuncture, and he's very good at it. Yet it works for him. That doesn't mean, and people get caught up in, I need to memorize what he says and how he says it. And you kind of lose the true feel of acupuncture because you don't engage in a grander way. And a lot of times that's what ends up happening with everything is this is the way it's done and that's it. And it just makes life so boring.
Right.
And
that in the structure of that, it comes into play too when you're teaching. I mean, as I've always taught, it's more drawing the information out of the student and then sharing in that space, which is really cool. And so, you know, the kind of funny little trick I do to you is when I say, I don't have any ideas about that, I don't know what I'm going to say, I really go into a space of just being present with what the conversation is, because usually we'll start talking about it before we start even doing the podcast. Right. And I try to not do that from my old DJ days because, you know, I don't want to talk up the part. And then I've already said what I want to say. I'd rather stay in the space of openness, but I'm also being present with you. Right. Otherwise, I mean, right now, I'm not planning what to say. No. I'm just sharing in the midst of what you're saying. And if something comes up, I try to remember, I think I'll add this, but I don't think about what I'm saying. And I think where you're saying that, I mean, isn't that interesting? You know, the dimension of thoughts and the dimension of the conversation exists in not just the planning. I mean, we were saying before, I had said I had seen this show, whatever, it's not really that funny, but they were doing a puzzle. And someone on the show said, this is the way you do the puzzle, you know, and other people wanted the freedom of doing it the way they wanted instead of doing the ends all around the border, and somebody wanted to do the middle. And, you know, there could be rules about everything. And when you set rules, they're there for a reason. Yet when you talk about being in the space of just inspired conversation, when you're in that space of inspired conversation, that's when it becomes multidimensional with lots of perception and possibility.
Is that things occur that you're like, you know, I was telling you at the store this morning, I was thinking to myself, I was looking for meatballs. I had people coming over. I'm Italian. And I'm like, but I wanted to get a certain thing, and I was like, where would the meatballs? Where would I find them? I can't find them. I'm always here. And this woman who's not Italian walks up and walks in front of me to the person that works there and asks, could you tell me where the meatballs are? And that's just an example of when you work in a different space of just being open, things start getting interesting. Like energy pops up. All of a sudden you start hearing things that maybe if you were so closed, you know, you're so like highly hyper-focused, you wouldn't have heard or you wouldn't have seen. And then when you start opening up to being open, and I can't quite grasp what, you know, find the words that I'm trying to describe, because when you live in that space, spontaneous things occur.
Well, you're
go ahead.
Well, you're open to synchronicity, and you're open to, and you start to see things as synchronous and relating and connecting, and collaboration opens.
But I don't even think it's not us. You know, we said earlier, you're like, oh well, if you start thinking about something, it occurs. I'm even going to the space of you're not even thinking about it, or you get an answer to something, and it's really a conversation. We're talking about collaboration of the energy or a higher sense, or, I mean, people can use the word God, universe, that you hear things differently. And when you have that conversation and you work with people who are multidimensional, that occurs more. And actually, sometimes the less words that are used, it's even more powerful. And, you know, versus being in a situation where someone, this is it, and they're dictating and dictating and dictating. It's very boring. It's it is, I hate to use the word one-dimensional, but it kind of gets boring, and like, who, you know, I don't want to have that kind of a conversation. Or if I'm in a situation where I'm stuck having it, I'll listen and do whatever I can. And like we say, the quickest thing we can to get out of it. But, you know, and I think a lot of people really are interested in that. And when I said to you, the people I talk to, and they're like, you know, say we work with energy, like, oh my God, I love that. I think that's what it is that when you open that space and someone comes in that space and they're open to it, and I got to find another word because I keep using the word open, you know, amenable to it, then they actually enjoy it. And I think people enjoy being in that. I mean, some of the movies that are out there that are like, I think of Total Recall. I remember walking out of that like, like you don't really know what happened. And it kind of opens up different ideas in your mind. And I think people really do enjoy that. And I think, the society that we're living in, and I agree with you, we need certain rules. I mean, we can't just go haphazardly hurting people, and I say hurting people because that's what we think is going to happen if we don't have rules. And there's some, I'll use acupuncture. You have to understand anatomy. You need to understand anatomy so you don't go in and do, pneumothorax, sit there and put a needle in and you puncture someone's lung. I mean, you do need to understand anatomy. But do I need to necessarily understand exactly the way one person did it? No. And so I think there's like a balance to that. And I think that's a little bit of what we're trying to explore, not for ourselves, because when we get together, we do this all the time and people around us. But I think that's a little bit of what we're trying to promote is other people doing that.
Well, I think also the dimensionality exists from the standpoint of routine. And when you're stuck in a routine, whether you know it or not, I mean, there's a lot of comfortable, sensations in a routine because you know exactly what's going to occur and you can remain comfortable with it. Other people find that boring.
And then you avoid uncertainty.
Right, you avoid uncertainty. And so sometimes, puffering up your routine or changing a couple of things or doing something different, you don't have to be drastic, gives you this little spark of like, ooh, I don't know what's going to happen. It's like you just infiltrated it with a little mystery, a little mystique, and what's going to happen. And when you have an engagement and a conversation from that level and from that space, I mean, the possibilities are always endless.
So sometimes you're better off just going. And, I think the one thing I've learned and I still work at is going into that space of just going with the flow. I mean, and I was for the longest time growing up, like, I'm going to get what I want and I'm going to do this. And I think I stifled certain things because I'm very motivated and I'm very, I go for what I want. And I'm not trying to say you don't do that, but there are times when I would have been better off if I pulled back a little bit and kind of opened up to other possibilities. And I think about that, and I think for myself, I would have, I'm where I am, and I'm not saying anything negative or I shouldn't be here, but I could have maybe made the road a little bit smoother for myself, and who knows what possibilities would have been.
I think there's a huge advantage to getting out of your own way. And sometimes things get so overwhelming that what do I need to do this, to do that, to do this? And someone says, this is what you need to do. There's always someone there that will tell you, this is what you need to do. And we go on and on about that. Yet, when you kind of open up in that space, and it does deal a lot with uncertainty. And so we're starting to say, you're in a multidimensional world. Of course, there's going to be uncertainties. I mean, you're playing on different levels, and you're in different fields, and you're in different vibrations. And so there's a lot of change going on. And so when you operate from that standpoint, I mean, you kind of throw routine away and you're just actively alive in that space at the moment. I mean, we've done different podcasts where, we don't have a sheet of paper that has it planned out what's going to occur. And I'm not hiding, written on my palm, some questions or points that I'm going to get out in between. You hear us a lot of times interrupting each other just because we're in the space of the energy.
Yeah,
and that's what comes out, and I think that opens up the different dimension to a conversation.
So what's important? Because I always sit and think, okay, if I'm going to listen, what am I talking about? What's important? And again, because we keep going we're trying to share. I'm not trying to tell anyone anything because I'm still learning and I'm sharing as I learn and move forward. And because I think of things that I've said to my own kids or whatever, and it really comes down to a point that I'm at is really just kind of being in the space of everything's okay. I know I'm supported. I know I'm loved. And I know that whatever occurs, I can get through. And I think right now, that's not what society supports in any way, shape, and form. It's almost gone so far to the extreme of, like you said, this is the rule. Do you want to be published? This is what you got to do. You got to find an agent. You got to do. We turned around and said, no, we're just going to publish our own stuff. We worked really hard on it. We edited it, and you're the writer, I'm not the writer, and
we collaborate with different resources and different energies, and we get it done.
I mean, so that's part of it, and I think where I'm at the moment is really kind of being in the space of just going with it. I mean, I'm doing a lot of new things, so we don't need to go into, but and the only way I can, I'm in complete uncertainty, and I'm just finding that the more I embrace just being in uncertainty, knowing I don't have all the answers, but the answers will always come to me, and trusting that is so empowering, and it's actually alleviates. There's just a huge alleviating that stress that I think so many people are in, and that's what I think I'm trying. My goal of sharing.
Well, it also gives life. It makes life an adventure rather than you're this age, it's time to retire. This. All that structure that's put into it is built into it to give it structure. Yet it makes life an adventure when you're not planning out or thinking or requiring things to be a certain way because that's how it's been. I mean, when you kind of shirk off the routine and you open up to life having multi dimensions,
I don't even think it's routine. That can occur. I don't think it's so much routine.
I do.
I don't think it's so much routine. I think it's just moving in the space. Like you got to go food shopping, you go food shopping, but you just open to. You get there when you get there, and you're going to end up, I'm going to be home and I'm going to have what I need. And the rest of it, you kind of let go.
Well, routine is an easy way to say habit, because if you go food shopping all the time, you experience it in a certain way, and, you do it a million times over your life. That's what you experience. And so does your brain kind of fill in episodes? Do you just go with the motions? But if you stay present, routine is a good word. Routine is a good word.
Well, I think you can be in routine and be present. You could drive, and you have to be present enough so you don't hit anything. Yet, I kind of go in a different space, and I think I'm actually a better driver. I don't go in. I'm not talking. I'm tired, and I get.
Yet that's really funny, because if you want to talk about the last time you came back from Canada, you proved my point, because you said, "Oh my God, I didn't go the way I usually go." I didn't follow the routine.
But
I
it
went
wasn't.
Out and it was a multi-dimensional
But it
experience.
wasn't. I went with a routine of this is the way I'm going, and you're right. I went, and it just didn't work that way, and I didn't get upset, and I didn't fight to keep my routine. I just said, "Oh, I'm going this. Okay, it worked out better." But I didn't go out saying, well, I have to break my routine. I said, because I've been there enough times, I know where I stop, and I know. And I'm like, okay, I'll just go and do it this way, the way I always do it. And from the minute I started, I'm going to say it, I get Dunkin' Donuts first thing in the morning, and it didn't work out for me. I'd go in someplace else. And it was just, it started off completely, and I went with it.
Yet
but I still was planning on going the way I normally go.
But there was a clarity of the awareness of the routine.
Yeah, but
otherwise, what would you have called it? So I mean, even just giving,
I don't call it a routine.
Giving a term to it.
I
have a script of
I have
kind
of
a rule. Yeah, I've gone with you. You got a script of a rule. This is where we go. This is how we go. You've shown me the directions.
Yeah, that's the first time I went there. That was the directions that I followed.
So I'm, so we agree to disagree.
Wait a minute, no.
Of a routine.
It is not a routine. I have directions. When you come to, you go somewhere, you have a certain routine. When you go to your parents' house, you have a routine. You know which way to go. If you get there and traffic's all backed up, you don't say, I'm going this way and that's it. You have to adapt. But you have a general way. You go out a certain way and you start off, I'll call it routine, but you're not so gung-ho that this is the only way I'll go. And when I went to Canada, it's just, it's a long drive. And when I have certain things, there's a little bit of familiarity. And how many times did I go? And now all of a sudden it's changing. Every time I go, I get different directions and I end up going a different way. And I guess the only thing I'm saying is that, if I use you as an example and you're going to go to your parents and you go a certain way, and you get on and the road's backed up, you could get all mad and upset and get angry and you say, I'm going this way because this is the way I go. Or you say, all right, I'll go a different way. And you kind of go with the flow more. And that's all I'm saying.
Or in the beginning, you just aren't even sure which way you're going to go. There's a multitude of dimensional ways you could go, and you just go which way you want to go.
All right. Well, listen.
And that
so
opens
I
up.
put this.
That opens up your perception. That opens up your awareness. That opens
I
up your living.
I don't.
And opening up into a multidimensional world.
I simply say try it. That's what I would say to everyone. Just try it, and just don't listen to that. This is the only way, and see what happens. That's all. And you know what? That's all I can say. Because everyone has different experiences and that's it. So that's really the message. Is just
and what a way to have fun and a different experience. This has been a production of EI Publishing in association with EI Alliance. Listen to other episodes and visit eipublishing.com to find more energized podcasts and books. Find New Threads' self-titled album, New Threads, on iTunes, Spotify, Bandcamp, or at newthreads.us. Thank you for listening.